There's something I've been noticing. It shows up quietly, long before anything looks obviously wrong. If you've got the space to hear a slower thought today, you're welcome to stay with me. Because what I'm talking about isn't dramatic, it's subtle. It's the moment your mind stops moving and you don't even realize it happened. Not because you became ignorant, not because you suddenly got careless, but because something inside you found relief. And relief can be dangerous when it gets mistaken for truth. There's a specific kind of quiet that settles in when nothing else feels contested anymore. Not silence, not peace. More like the absence of pressure and the absence of tension. The feeling that whatever question you were carrying has finally been answered, and now you can stop holding it. And I think that feeling tricks people more than anything else. Because we tend to assume that if something lands smoothly, it must be correct. If it fits, it must be real. But sometimes the reason something fits is because it matches the shape of what you were already carrying. Most people don't walk around feeling sad all day or angry. It's flatter than that. Muted, restless, unresolved. It's that internal itch you can't name. The kind that makes you stay busy, not because you're productive, but because stillness would force you to feel the thing underneath. So you fill time. You fill the gap. You stay in motion. And when you live like that, ideas arrive differently. They don't arrive as something to examine. They arrive like a solution. Like something that finally explains the tension you've been carrying. And when something finally explains it, the response isn't curiosity. It's relief. Relief that you don't have to keep sitting with the unknown. Relief that you don't have to keep wondering whether it's you. Relief that you can stop searching. That relief can feel identical to clarity. But clarity usually costs something. It usually takes friction. You have to turn an idea over, feel the rough parts, and check what doesn't make sense yet. Relief doesn't require any of that. Relief is instant, and that immediacy is the giveaway. Because the moment something feels immediately right, the work changes. You're not exploring anymore. You're holding. And holding an idea feels very different than thinking about it. Thinking stays flexible. Thinking has movement, and it can be adjusted without collapsing you. Holding tightens. Holding becomes a posture. At some point, without a notification, the movement stops. The idea doesn't get tested. It doesn't get questioned. It doesn't get turned over and examined from the side of it you don't like. It just stays. And that staying gets mistaken for certainty. I didn't understand this for a long time. There were periods in my life where my behavior didn't even register as a choice. It just felt like the environment, like gravity. When I was in the military, weekends followed a script. You worked all week, then you went out and drank. That wasn't rebellion. It wasn't celebration. It was routine. If you were around people, alcohol was involved. That was the assumption. And assumptions don't feel like decisions. They feel inevitable. I didn't stop to ask whether I even wanted that to be a part of my life. I didn't ask what it was doing to my mind or what it was doing to my sense of control. Because nothing around me invited that question. The culture didn't suggest reflection. It suggested release. And for a while, it felt normal. Until it didn't. Over time, I started noticing something I couldn't ignore. I didn't like who I was in those moments. Not afterwards in a moral way. During. The version of me that showed up didn't feel aligned. Not monstrous, just careless, sloppier and looser than I expected. And it wasn't one incident that caused the shift. It was accumulation, repeated embarrassment, repeated moments that didn't match the person I wanted to be. And eventually, those moments didn't stay confined to the weekend. They followed me into the week. They lingered. And when something lingers like that, it asks to be looked at. That was the turning point. Not a vow, not a dramatic decision, just a question that wouldn't leave me alone. Why am I okay with this being normal? That question didn't feel empowering. It felt uncomfortable. Because the answer wasn't flattering. The answer pointed right back at me. It pointed at habits I hadn't examined and excuses I'd accepted because everyone else accepted them too. There's a strange thing that happens when behavior gets justified by a community. The responsibility thins out. This is just what people do. It's not really you. It doesn't count. But altered states don't erase consequence. You're still you. And when people excuse each other long enough, the pattern hardens. It stops being questioned. It stops being optional. And at that point, awareness creates a fork. You can either lean into the justification, or you can let the discomfort speak. Letting it speak isn't loud. It's quiet. It looks like sitting alone without distraction and realizing something that most people avoid for their entire lives. You don't enjoy your own company. That realization was heavier than the behavior itself. Because when I slowed down enough to actually be with myself, what surfaced wasn't confidence. It was dissatisfaction. Not with life, with me. I noticed how little respect I had for myself in those moments. How easily I compromised things that I claimed mattered. And that recognition didn't instantly fix anything. It just removed my ability to pretend. That's a difference people don't talk about enough. Seeing clearly doesn't automatically create change. There's a gap between knowing and doing, and I've lived in that gap. I've watched myself keep doing things I already knew weren't helping me. Awareness doesn't equal action. Something else has to enter the picture. Direction. At some point, I stopped obsessing over what I should stop doing, and I started asking a different kind of question. What kind of person am I building? Not an ideal borrowed from someone else, not a persona, just the most complete version of myself that I could imagine from where I was standing. Not achievable, but visible. And alongside that image, I considered the opposite. If I don't change, if I keep choosing familiarity over alignment, where does that lead? Holding those two outcomes at the same time changed how choices felt. They stopped being isolated, and they became directional. Small actions mattered because they pointed somewhere. That's when I understood something that changed how I look at thinking. Thinking doesn't end when an answer appears. It ends when an answer relieves you enough to stop asking. That's the moment worth noticing. Not when your belief shifts, not when you feel confident, but when curiosity shuts down quietly and you don't miss it. Because certainty that arrives without effort often isn't the result of understanding. It's the result of escape. Escape from tension, escape from self-examination, escape from sitting with something unfinished. And the mind is extremely skilled at disguising escape as clarity. So maybe the most important thing isn't what you believe. Maybe it's how quickly belief arrives, how little resistance it meets, and how fast it settles. Because the moment something feels finished before it's examined is often the moment thinking has already stopped. So here's the question. When something clicks immediately, when it brings relief instead of friction, when it feels settled before it's explored, what did that certainty save you from having to sit with?